Okay,
Are we on?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special meeting of the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee. This meeting is to consider the Council's draft annual report to full Council. And I'll just go through my usual preamble, if you don't mind, colleagues. So my name is Councillor Neil Warshaw, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. Please can I remind members to turn their microphones to mute when they are not speaking and to use the hand raising function to indicate they would like to speak as we move through agenda. I will be very conscientious and make a list of when I see people, that's when you get to speak. So if you don't think you've seen me make a gesture in the camera shot, that'll be fine also. Please can I ask members to introduce themselves in turn, starting with Councillor Anderson.
Councillor Barry Anderson, Adlin Wharfdale Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Jonathan Bentley, Councillor for Wheatwood Ward.
Councillor Buckley.
Councillor Neil Buckley, Old Woodley Ward.
Now, next on my list is Councillor Forsyth, but I think she's currently dueling with technology. So introducing her, but just to say, Anne is a new member of the committee following her appointment to full council on the 11th of November. So I'd like to welcome her when she appears. Councillor Garthwaite.
Al Garthwaite, Councillor for Headingley and Hyde Park Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Carlisle.
Hi, Councillor Peter Carlisle, Carveling Fardley Ward.
Councillor Illingworth. Thanks very much, Peter. Councillor Illingworth.
John Illingworth, Councillor for Kirkstall Ward.
Thank you. Councillor Midgley.
Good morning, Councillor Morel Midgley from Kipax and Methley Ward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shazad.
Yeah, Councillor Mohammed Shazad from the Morton and Meanwood Ward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wadsworth.
Good morning, Councillor Paul Wadsworth, representing Guys in Rawdon Ward.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ray.
Councillor Paul Ray, representing Hunslet and Riverside Ward.
Thank you very much. And let's go through our officers. So we have Polly Cook.
Polly Cook, Chief Officer of Sustainable Energy and Air Quality.
And Harriet Spade.
Hi, Harriet Spate, Governance Officer.
Thank you very much. Right, folks. So this is our one-item agenda that covers our annual report, which is going to full council in January. As you might imagine, I'm very pleased, excited to present this to full council and for us to consider it today. It's our draft report. So it's really about questions and comments on the report. So, but let's go through our our regular items of agenda first. So, item 1, Harriet, are there any appeals?
No appeals, Chair.
Item 2, any items of exempt information?
There's no exempt information today, Chair.
Any light items?
No late items, Chair.
Item 4, does any elected member have any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests? Not seeing any indications. Excellent. Any apologies, Harriet?
No apologies have been received for today's meeting, Chair, and I can see that Councillor Forsyth has just joined us.
Councillor Forsyth, do you want to introduce yourself? We can't hear Anne.
Sorry, Councillor Anne Forsyth, Farnley and Wortley Ward. I'm sorry for my late arrival. I have been on my phone trying to getting on, but I'm here now.
It's okay, and I did welcome you as a new member as well after your appointment to full council on the 11th of November. So welcome aboard the good ship SEAC. So, item 6. As I've mentioned, this is our annual report to full council. So Polly's going to present, and then we'll do questions and comments in our usual manner.
Could I ask? I can't find the papers for this meeting. If you could just point me in the right direction, I'll open them and load them, but I can't find them at the moment.
Councillor Illingworth, I'll just post a link in the chat for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Harriet. And if all else fails, members, there's always the fallback of the major meeting date page on the council website, which has all your document needs. So, well, and then at the end of the meeting, we need to approve the draft report to go to exec board and to full council. So, Polly.
Okay, so in the report, we've just set out the context of obviously the declaration of the climate emergency in March 2019 and the decision to form the SEAC committee, and then just set the context of actually what what's happened during that time period, and obviously the impact of the pandemic. So generally, from a climate emergency point of view, the impacts that we've seen in terms of reduced emissions, the changes to the way that people are working, but then also just some of the highlights from this year in terms of delivery. So things such as housing and low carbon retrofit and some of the new funding that we've achieved, the work that's going on in parks and countryside in terms of the 50 hectares planting, the launch of the electric bike scheme, the launch of the electric vehicle trial scheme, and also the district heating and the progress that's been made on that. So there's just a very kind of light introduction to some of that context, which will be expanded on when we go to Exec Board in February. And then we talk more specifically about the work of the committee and what's happened over the last year, and highlighting, I suppose, the role that the committee plays in terms of public engagement and enabling other people to come into the council to talk through open forum, but also to watch and to participate and to use it as a focus, I suppose, for lobbying. And that's seen as quite a critical role, because when we first set out with the climate emergency declaration, one of the key things was that actually that communication engagement has got to be at the centre of everything we do. So this provides one more channel. It's enabled further media attention across the climate emergency. So it provides another point of focus for the media. And I think within the report, we use the example of when we had the food session, that did then attract quite a lot of media attention, which again is helpful in that aim of trying to get the public engaged and understanding some of the issues that are facing the city. It then goes through some of the kind of key topics that we've covered over the last 12 to 18 months. So everything from having businesses come to talk to us about their various aspirations and ambitions so that we can see what's happening across the city, because it's not meant to be a council focused committee. It's very much meant to be outward looking and bringing other people in so we can see what's going on across the city. Sorry. And then also we had issues such as obviously aviation. We've had the community bid and the lottery bid and setting out how that's going to work. And there's been an important relationship in terms of the citizens jury. So a place for those recommendations to be brought, to be looked at and to be reviewed and to see and to monitor that progress and to see what's happening against all of those different recommendations. It then also details 3 different working groups. So we obviously have the planning and buildings working group, we have the transport working group and the food and biodiversity working group. So it tries to pull out sort of the key achievements of each of those groups. So for example, for planning, we talk about things like the developers forum, some of the work that's been done in reviewing different plans and providing input. On transport, again, it's looked across the transport strategy that's just going to Exec Board this month, but it's also looked at things like the active streets, walking strategy. It's engaged with people like the Clean Air Alliance. So again, we've tried to be outward looking and make sure that we're listening to other people's views and trying to raise our own kind of knowledge base, so that when we're making decisions that actually it's based on detail. So for example, in the food and biodiversity group, we've had the university support us in terms of some of those presentations and providing further data and again helping to improve our own understanding. And with the biodiversity, obviously looking at areas for planting, how we prioritise, looking at some of the challenges we face across the city. So that is a bit of a whistle stop tour, but I think probably the time is spent better with people commenting and feeding in and asking questions.
Thanks, Polly. Yes, I completely agree, which is why there wasn't a sort of a long preamble monologue from myself as well, because we've done an awful lot this year, and I'm very pleased with the work we've done and the way the working groups have worked. And so what I want to do now is open things up for members. So I'm looking for hands up, comments, otherwise this is going to be one of our shortest meetings ever, which is in contrast to the length of the meetings throughout the entire year. Councillor Buckley, of course, and then Councillor Bentley. Neil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one and then another question if I can. On your preamble to the agenda, Neil, you mentioned that no Arctic sea ice has formed this year. And just very briefly, I was interested in that because We've all heard about this gigantic iceberg, which is about the size of the Isle of Wight, which apparently is heading towards South Georgia. And I just wonder whether somebody could tell me whether, as a layman in terms of ice formation and icebergs and all this stuff, whether that's a sign that it shouldn't be separated from the main ice, or whether it's a bigger bit of ice than it should be normally. That's just the first question. But the question I was going to ask really, which I'm sure we'll all get to in more detail, is in terms of presenting this to people, bearing in mind this is a report, this whole year has been dominated by the coronavirus and all the...
Neil, can I just stop you for a minute? If anyone can hear any groaning, sorry, Neil, to interrupt. If anyone can hear any groaning, my dog is dreaming loudly, and I don't really know how else to say it than that. Really sorry.
I couldn't hear any groaning, which is
thank you. It's just when you're in the room, it's really loud, and I didn't want it coming through the mic without anyone thinking. I don't know, but anyway, that is my husky asleep under the Christmas tree. I do apologise, Councillor Buckley, if you continue.
All right, it was just to say that I heard it then. Just to say that this year has been dominated by the coronavirus and all the measures taken to deal with it and so on. And I just wondered in what way we're actually going to say to people that what we're reporting now is different to what we would have reported, or is the intention just to say that this is a year which has made no difference to what we think? Just a couple of initial thoughts.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I think if Polly could pick up the C19 report in a second, but regarding the sea ice, yeah, there was quite an alarming set of data from the sort of the autumn, when the usual pack sea ice that forms was forming, had not formed in mid-October. It had formed more or less by mid-November, but it's just never been that late. And it's sort of one of those, for climatologists, it's one of those sort of red flashing warning lights. And also there's been record breakages off various Antarctic ice shelves as well. And as they're the two parts of the world that are warming the most, particularly the North Pole, then they're the canaries in the coal mine, so to speak. And when it comes to climate emergency warnings, along with mountain glaciers. So I just thought it's illustrative of a point, because I think the moment where the Arctic becomes ice-free will be one of those moments that goes along with Neil Armstrong landing on the moon, Montgolfier's balloon, that kind of thing. It'll be, the Wright brothers. It'll be a moment that'll be talked about in 1,000 years' time in science classes, and it should be enormously concerning. So that's why I put it in as an illustrative example. So yeah, in terms of Corona, I mean, yes, it's made an impact this year, and it's made this year very different from what the year we envisaged. But it has changed, to cut to the brass tacks of the science, it has changed the emission profile of Leeds, let's say. But at the same time, at great cost, it's also showed people what a different existence could be in terms of having a world with much reduced traffic levels, that kind of thing. So, and different ways of working and living. So whilst they're interesting, I think we should always be mindful that they've come at great cost to various people. But it has provided examples to people that we can say this is how we could do things differently. So Polly, do you want to speak to those points?
Yeah, certainly. So in terms of Corona, I have referenced it in the report in the sense of the impact it's had on global emissions in the kind of background context, and also obviously the impact it's had in terms of the meeting schedule and the delays to some of the meetings, and the fact that we got online. And so, I mean, apart from probably the working groups were impacted more, but the committee, I think we only missed, was it one meeting, and then we got back online. So I've set that out, but I've not specifically talked about kind of the wider impacts of the coronavirus. So I was focusing really on the impact on the SEAC committee. I can certainly strengthen that if people feel that would be useful.
It could be a little bit if members are agreeable. I think certainly we the way the working groups, we picked those up again, I was really pleased with. Is that all right, Councillor Buckley?
Yeah, that's fine, Chair. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you so much. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, when I got a number of questions, not questions so much as comments, but when Neil was talking, it reminded me that Neil is in fact the shadow chair of this committee, and I just wondered whether Neil had sight of this and had made a contribution to it as shadow chair, and I don't know whether he should be having his signature on it as well, because I know we're the only committee that has a shadow chair, so perhaps that's something governance could talk about. I have a bit of a problem with the report in its sort of impact, I think, on someone reading it. It comes across as like a list of things that have been happening, but what I'd like to see, I think, is a clear statement of the difference that this committee has made to our progress towards achieving our target for 2030, and perhaps some metrics in it that show where we're coming from, what the targets are over the next few years, what we've got to do, and you know, the roadmap to 2030 as an introduction of telling people seeing this for the first time and not being sort of engulfed in the day-to-day and attending the meetings exactly what we're about. And so it's sort of this is what we're here for, and this is the difference we've made, and I can't see that anywhere. I can see a lot of things that have happened that other people have, other parts of the council have done, and we've listened to and whatever, but I can't see where someone's saying what difference has the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee made? What it contributed to our progress towards our targets for 2030? I can't see that. So, and then also a lot of things about, we've listened to ideas. So we've had people coming in from on the open forums and coming with ideas. We've had the citizens jury coming forward with ideas. But what have we done with those? What have we expected the rest of the council or the rest of the city to have done as a result of that? Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that for the moment. But I think I think we could be making a lot more if it's there. I mean, we might be saying, well, we don't make a difference, and we haven't done any of this, and so this report then reflects that. But if we have made a difference and we have taken ideas and tried to influence the rest of the council and the rest of the city, I think we should be making more of it. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bentley. Yes, the influence we've had is often through the working groups, the impact on food, on climate, on planning, on buildings, the impact on the local plan review that'll be climate emergency led in tandem with the development plan panel. So we've had quite a lot of impact in terms of how council policy is evolving. We've also had quite a lot of impact in bringing people together across the city that are interested in this agenda, and boy, should they be, and also building those.
Excuse me, Chair, can I just interrupt? I don't want an answer. Sorry, I'm making the comment about the report, and if all that is there, it's not coming through very well. To me, it isn't. Maybe okay. I'm.
It's a stylistic point.
Well, it's.
Okay.
I don't want you to give me a list of things why we have made a difference and everything else, because that should be in the report. I should be picking it up from the report. So if it is there, I think from my point of view, it needs bringing out more strongly.
Okay.
If other people are satisfied that all those things are there, that it does show that we've made a difference, it does show that we've influenced change, it does show that we're on a roadmap to achieving our target, and other people are happy that it's showing that. I'm happy. It's my reading of it that is wrong.
Well, There is a lot of influence. Polly, do you want to, in terms of sort of stylistic point to the report? I mean, we could make it a huge weighty reporting on portfolio activities tome, but what do you think?
I can look to bring that out more strongly. I think it was just balancing. I was conscious we've got an exec board report also coming in February where things like the roadmap and that will be quite clear. So I was trying to balance between the two, and maybe I've gone too far the other way. So I'm happy to try and bring that out a bit stronger.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, thanks. Councillor Ray.
Yeah, we've just done this up on it, and I actually think probably just referencing the exec board papers probably all that's needed, because I think we have to balance this between what we want to see and actually accessibility to the public, because obviously this will then eventually go onto the council website with the council agenda papers, and actually what we may want to see as councillors is not necessarily what translates well to the public, because a lot of what we're doing is actually quite technocratic and nitpicky and frankly geeky, and actually that doesn't translate well when you're trying to do that. So what I would like to see is maybe it just referenced in the report that a more detailed kind of analysis will go with the exec board, but also a commitment to actually have this translated in a way that's actually shareable to the wider public and accessible to the wider public, not just to the people who like us are a bit fascinated in this, because we've got to bring the city with us. And we've also got to appreciate, you know, there's people that have communications issues, etc., and they need to be as part of this conversation, this journey, as much of us. So I do take Councillor Bentley's point, but I think, as Polly has said, we can probably maybe just reference it that a more detailed papers coming for the council's consideration, but also have that commitment in the paper that there's an understanding that we need to make a more broad-based communication strategy to translate what we have done in a way that is digestible to the wider public.
Thanks, Paul. That's really helpful. I mean, the points you're both making are not antithetical to each other. There is an important part of our role is communicating to people. I am acutely aware that in my ward, this issue is, and in Councillor Bentley's ward, is sort of understood and acknowledged by a huge swathe of the population. Now, that's very different in some other wards, and it's that educative process we're right in the middle of. We've had things like the big climate conversation that have really helped. We've had the citizens jury that's really helped, but that process is ongoing, isn't it? So yeah, so we need to strike a balance between what you both want, which I'm sure Polly can do. So, Councillor Bentley, did you want to just come back in, and then Councillor Buckley?
Yeah, just very quickly, Chair. I appreciate entirely what Councillor Ray has just said about communicating to the wider public and in a way that is understandable, and your point that not all parts of the city will be as engaged with this as others, and I completely agree. But this is a report to council, which should lead to either debate or not, but it is a report to council for discussion, and I think in that case it should be written in such a way that it demonstrates about what we've done to the council who set it up. So, but you know, I think a communication exercise, a wider communication exercise, is ideal, and I know we've been doing that, and perhaps that should be reflected in the report as well. But I think the reference to the exec board paper would also be good, so people can follow the trail.
Well, I think we can accommodate both of those within the report. I don't think that's particularly problematic. Councillor Carlill. Oh, sorry, it was Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Carlill.
Find my buttons.
No, it was Councillor Buckley, then Councillor Carlill, Peter. Because Councillor Buckley, see, I'm trying to do it in order fairness at all times, and it was Councillor Buckley who had it. Sorry, Peter, and then you're after Councillor Buckley, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. I'll be brief. I think Councillor Bentley and Councillor Ray are both right in the remarks that they've made, actually. And I think maybe we ought to acknowledge the fact that, let's just say, this was a year ago, and we knew then that at the end of 2020, the air quality would have improved so much that we couldn't have a clean air zone, that it was completely unnecessary and was part of history. We'd be amazed, and we'd think, well, we wouldn't have achieved that, but it's quite a thought, isn't it? Unfortunately, what's also happened is that we've had the virus and we've had an economic collapse. But it would be interesting just to insert that reference into the report, I think.
Yeah. Reference to 2020. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Carlisle, now's your time.
Thanks, Chair. Mine's quite a quick one as well. I think one of the really key things of the board, obviously, is the open forum, where and there's not many opportunities, and I think we bring that out really well in the report, Polly, in terms of the position of this board and the various opportunities we have to engage with the public, the press, and to get some of the stories out there. But in terms of the open forum, I don't know whether this is something that's covered in the exec board report a bit more, but people have obviously put forward suggestions to us for particular topics and put forward their arguments. We note the groups that have come, but I wondered whether we should have more, just to respect those that came in, about the particular topics that they raised, the particular responses that therefore they were given to those, because obviously they're the key subjects and topics that the public wanted us to focus on in these meetings and us to listen to, and obviously our responsibility is to them really to discuss these things. So even when we're coming back to council, it'd be useful for council, then full council, to be able to see what those topics were, so that might lead to a really engaging debate. As Councillor Bentley was saying, really this is going to lead to a conversation in council, and that would be a really good conversation about what residents of the city wanted us to talk about and to hear.
Now that is an excellent idea. Polly, I think we can facilitate that, can't we?
Yeah, what about if I put it as an appendix? So we do the general reference in the report and then we have an appendix with a list of everyone that's come, what they've raised and the responses. Is that people happy with that approach?
I would be, folks. Yeah, seen a lot of nods around the room.
People are nodding.
Good. Even a thumbs up. Councillor Illingworth, you're next with your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to apologise.
Is this about heat pumps, by the way?
No, it's not about heat pumps. It's about human stupidity, among other things. One thing I managed to do today was to delete the actual meeting from my calendar. And what that did was expose another meeting underneath, which I then followed up thinking it was the real thing. So I spent a lot of time chasing through reports that are not actually going to be discussed today. And it's why I appear in such a shambles. So anyway, that's the explanation. But there's a couple of things I wanted to raise from the report.
Sure.
One thing which I'm anxious to see us acknowledge are the bits that don't fit properly, because I think that's an important part of policy making. And I can point out a number of things, I think, in our policy, which seem to be inconsistent and possibly unachievable. And I think we shouldn't be sort of hypercritical. It's good that people notice these things and start to take corrective action. But I think we should, if there is a problem, we should point it out rather than pretending it isn't there. But one thing that worries me is about the sustainable energy from the RRF. I can't get a figure for what our actual consumption of fossil fuels is in the RRF, because I think it's not zero by any stretch. I think it might be quite a big chunk of our total carbon budget. So I think a clarity on this, and this is just a speculation from my point of view, I think we need to get the RRF carbon consumption down. And I'm asking really, is that the case? If it is the case, how are we going to do it? Because the technology depends on a certain quantity of heat being put in and getting to a sort of irreducible minimum of natural gas or something to keep the thing alight. So I have worries about that. I have worries about green space. Representing in the city ward as you do, green space is profoundly precious, and I don't see the hemorrhage to development sites stopping in the near future. So I'd like to flag up in the city green space and what measures we're going to take to keep it at a reasonable level and prevent it being nibbled away, as I feel it is being nibbled away at the moment. I think those are two topics I'd like. I don't want to give a long list, but there are two topics that worry me where I think we're not actually heading in a sustainable direction, and we need to do differently.
Okie dokie. Both of those sound like interesting items for January's meeting. For us to seek some further information. John, how about that?
Oh, okay, I just want to do it in a nice, polite, friendly way where we can talk about things without feeling embarrassed about them, and just do better if we can. Yeah, I mean, certainly the impact of the RRF and its fuel consumption from all different sources. That's probably one for the energy and buildings working group to look at. How about if we sort of Harriet's seriously taking notes? So how about for that working group, we get some information for us to discuss and examine, and the same for green space again for the planning working group, and then we can examine inner city green space there. How about that? I said that would be great. It would be excellent, and very much the spirit of which I was trying to raise it. Yeah.
Excellent. Right, next up is Councillor Forsyth.
Right, thank you very much. Although there's a lot I could, of course, say, and I'm actually new to this committee, this is about the report, so I'll keep this quite brief. First of all, I like in the forward that Councillor Walshaw has written what he highlights, especially the idea of Leeds being a lead in the position of needing to lead on this. That's one first thing as well. But if there was one thing that could be put in bold, I would have the very first part of the background information. I'm going to quote this. The council has accepted that very urgent action is required to make our contribution to containing global temperature rises within 1.5 degrees centigrade. Beyond this limit, there is a strong scientific consensus that there will be catastrophic consequences for both humanity and the natural world. So Councillor Buckley's already mentioned about the issue about the iceberg, and there's far more that could be said. So as far as the report is concerned, Holly, thank you very much for the report, and also for all the enormous amount of work you've done, and also the amount of work that's been done within the working groups. I've sat on 2 of them, and what we know now that we didn't know collectively and have got our heads round is enormous. I wonder where we'd be if it hadn't been for the climate, if it hadn't been for the coronavirus pandemic. I would like to think that by now the council would have had an action plan to tackle the climate emergency. That's what's needed. And I appreciate that that's not been able to be done because of the climate emergency. But I do think that sort of pulling out what are some of the other members of this this group have put out. So that's pretty much all I want. One other thing I wish to say though is the unfortunate part of the work that hasn't been done, of course, is with schools. So if we're looking at things that we can look at as a priority, I do think that should be our priority, really. We've had some good presentations from young people, and it also fits in with the Build Back Better and the active travel and so on. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Anne. Yes, I think, yeah, 2020 has been a year of years, hasn't it, in so many respects. We have got, everything's getting back on track to various degrees. There's a lot we need to do, but yes, the next exec board report in February is an extremely important one, and a lot of sort of, if you like, the next phase of work stems from that, and will progress into the next municipal year through Councillor Mulheron's portfolio and through the work of this committee. So we would be probably past that stage if it wasn't for Corona. So, but so it means we have to work quicker, doesn't it? And do more work. More working groups, everybody? Are you all right with that? Good? Yeah? I've seen a lot of enthusiastic smiles. Excellent. Polly, you want to come in?
Just to say that for January, what we're looking to do is a focus on schools. Yeah. So we obviously have to work around what schools can provide in terms of how we're going to engage with them, because the idea was we'd have had a lot of children actually attend the SEAT working group. Yeah. So we're trying to do that via various different videos and have children's services and things involved. So that's our sort of initial plan that we're starting to map out. So hopefully that'll go some way to answering Councillor Forsyth's suggestion.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much for that. Before to our work programme for the rest of the year, there's a lot going on. Councillor Mulheron.
Thank you, Chair. I just think it's worth really emphasising in the report, and I think it's in there, but maybe it just needs to be made a bit stronger, that whilst we've had a health crisis this year, and clearly that has impacted in terms of some of the meetings that the committee has been able to have, that work has continued unabated across all of the streams, whether that's transport, housing, planning. And as you know, Chair, certainly in terms of the local plan, we're making very good progress in terms of trying to bring that up to date in line with the climate emergency. And I'd say particularly in terms of highways and transport, the way in which officers have responded and not only carried on the work that was already planned to be taking place. So all of that major infrastructure change in the city centre that you've seen around Park Row, Infirmary Streets, around the hedgerow, all of that's continued, but also we have had a huge amount of additional work taking place in terms of the emergency active travel measures. And in terms of the comments around the impact on, for instance, air quality of the pandemic, we were already seeing huge improvements in terms of air quality as a result of the changes that both bus operators and private hire and taxi drivers have made to the vehicles that they use in the city. The evidence was there before the pandemic hit. Clearly, we would all hope, I think, that some of the changes that people made in terms of being more active, in terms of accessing more of their local kind of services, will be able to continue, whilst we also want to see people be able to get back to a more normal quality of life next year. So it's about how we take the best of what we've learned throughout the last 8-9 months and keep that, but also try to regain the stuff that we're all desperately missing, isn't it? And I think the measures that we've taken in terms of improving the cycle routes in particular, but also our areas as well, the broadening of footpaths, and the way in which we're trying to build that in terms of making safer cycling much more accessible to people. I think if we can keep some of that and then also obviously get confidence back in terms of using public transport, we can actually see some of the improvements that we've seen in terms of air quality and people getting that blend of active travel and use of public transport, and keep that for the longer term.
Yeah. Excellent. Yes. No, I agree. It's a good way of putting it. It's capturing the best of what we've experienced, but getting back to the things we really miss and love. And then the other third of it is building back better, isn't it? I completely agree. So we can bring out all of that in the report as well. Councillor Wadsworth.
Thank you, Chair. The debate's moved on a slight bit because I really wanted to come back at what Councillor Ray and Councillor Cahill have said and sort of agree with them on that front. We have had a lot of members of the public or lobbying groups come over the year, and they've represented their own strands of the debate, and we're now starting to see a little bit of the fruits of our labour of that, in the sense of there was a big advocate at the beginning of the year. We must get CAS up and running. We must get people onto public transport. It's all the driver for it. Well, CAS now has gone away partly because of the lack of vehicles, but also the way vehicles have changed. And public transport, I'm very keen that Councillor Mulheron thinks that we can get confidence back onto public transport, because we have a huge job to do there on that front. Because obviously public transport is pretty much non-existent at the moment, and that's something else. And of course we had a lot of lobbying about air travel, but at the moment that has sorted itself out by the fact that the skies are quiet, and in a certain extent we want some of that to come back, otherwise we won't have the economy of the city to move on. And also, the most recent thing is the tree planting, which everybody thought was going to be a panacea. We'll plant trees in our local parks everywhere, and that will be really good. And I have to say, the consultation from Parks and Countryside with ward members has been brilliant. Certainly in my ward, it's been brilliant. I have to say, the public have not been quite as keen on the tree planting as I thought they would be, in all fairness. When the marks went down, lots of emails came in, lots of park staff were stopped about what the marks were. And I know that in some wards, it's been brought to a halt completely. But if you go back a year and you said, we're going to plant trees, people would have said, absolutely brilliant, we need more trees. But now people want the green space back to sit on and picnic on, because people say to me, you're planting trees where in the summer we picnicked because we had nowhere else to go. Now we don't know what next summer's going to bring. So a lot of us hope that we might get back to the Costa del Sol. Maybe so, maybe not. Maybe there won't be as many people picnicking, but it's around getting the actual public, not the lobbying groups, really involved, because I guess in advance of full council, we're going to get a lot of emails from the general public saying, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing that, as we've had in the past. So I think it's getting that over in the report about how it affects the general public and not just the lobbying groups.
Yeah, I mean this is why we do a lot of public consultation, isn't it? Tree planting is not a panacea, but it's a cure-all. But it is incredibly important. This city needs to sequestrate a lot more carbon than it does at the moment, and one of the main key ways of doing that is through tree planting. But it's got to be the cliche. It's got to be the right trees in the right places, hasn't it? And it's about getting that detail right. We need to look not only at, well, we need to rethink about how we use public space as public land, but also we need to think about, is there a case for perhaps the government, say, allowing councils to compulsory purchase land for forests at not residential prices? I mean, that would be an interesting way to go, I think, particularly some areas of greenbelt that are marginal land, because bear in mind, not all greenbelt is beautiful and worth visiting. Greenbelt does a job of constraining urban growth, but actually could that be purchased for perimeter forest growth? And that would need local and central government working together on that. I think there's a lot of scope for that. But at all times, no one in this council believes that tree planting is a way to, like I said, as a cure-all, as a way to mitigate our surface transport emissions or our air transport emissions. There is not enough land in the world for that. So we're all clear on that, which is great. But you're right, the tree planting work is good, but it needs to be the bright trees in the right places. Next up, I have Councillor Garthwaite. He's having internet problems, I think.
At last. Sorry about that, technology. I wondered if we could mention the fact that so far there's been at least 2 big barges carrying aggregate up the canal into the city, thereby taking HGVs off the road. And this is only going to increase. And it's 2020 has been a landmark in getting that started again. Because it's a positive thing. I'd also like to say that I do travel on public transport. I visit my childcare bubble on the train, and it's a very pleasant experience at the moment. It's very clean and very safe. And I also go on the bus, ditto. So, and then as regards the tree planting, I maybe haven't paid as much attention to this as I should, and I don't know whether we've talked about the liaison with the Friends of groups in the tree planting and where they should be. As Councillor Wadsworth said, sometimes it's not been popular and people want to have picnics, etc. But quite often they've suggested other places where trees would be better planted. So it's a very dynamic and ongoing partnership. It's not just don't let's have it, which I think is important.
Yeah, no, I very much agree. I did not know that about the barges carrying aggregates. That's new. That's excellent. There's a lot of capacity there, I think. And what is it? Slightly facetious when I say this, but it only took a global pandemic for the bus and train companies to make sure their vehicles were really, really clean. So progress of some respect. Okay, that's excellent. we've covered an awful lot of ground in the report, and Harriet and Paul, you've been furiously taking notes throughout. Are there any other comments from elected members? Oh, Councillor Buckley, yes.
Yes, thanks, Chair. It's just a quick comment as to whether we could try to reassure people about all the dates. I think people are becoming a bit confused. They've got a government target for 2050. They've got 2045, which is the UK 100, 2038, which is West Yorkshire, 2033, which is gas boilers, 2032 used to be the ban on cars, and it's now going to be 2030, and 2030 is the Leeds target. And there are probably some more that I've forgotten about, but I think people possibly could just do with some reassurance that we know there are all these competing targets, if you like, out there, and that we understand that, and that there should be some coherence to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We could put a paragraph that says Leeds is evidence-led, Leeds, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. And that's a facetious way of putting it, but it is pretty accurate. Yeah, I mean, Polly will come up with a way of capturing that. It's a good point you're making, because there are dates all over the place. And I've said before, so this is not news to any elected member on this committee, but any day after 2030 is pushing it, and 2050 is absolutely bobbins. So, which is a new technical scientific term. So we'll find a way of capturing that without being too overtly political, Councillor Buckley. Hey, no, but I think we all agree on this in this committee and in the council chamber that the 2050 date is not based on any scientific reality. I think that's fine. But yeah, we'll bring all that out in a sensible way. Councillor Illingworth.
So, well, it's about tree planting, and it's an aspect which my wife has drawn my attention to, and that is the effect of tree planting on agricultural yields. And she has little graphs of first tomato ripening times and distance from trees. And it's a really obvious effect that if you plant lots of trees, they catch the sunlight, they shade the ground. If you're trying to grow crops in the vicinity, your crop yields fall dramatically. And obviously, we've got lots of allotment land in Leeds, which is very much at risk of this sort of thing. And I just wanted to say that in doing our tree planting programme, we have to watch shading of agricultural land, because it will lead to loss of production. End of message.
No, thanks. We'll feed that back to Parks and Countryside. Excellent. Okay. So I'm not seeing any more hands up. Polly, do you want to briefly summarise everything we've said just now in the last hour?
Would like me to? I can try. Thank you very much.
Do you have anything to bring everything together? Is really what I mean.
Yeah, so we can certainly improve the context setting, especially around the pandemic, but also linking it through to the other reports that exist. Make sure that the impact comes through more strongly, whilst also still trying to make sure that it's a fairly succinct report in terms of making it accessible to the public. I think bringing out some of the points around actually what has happened. So we have had the pandemic, but obviously we've had the positives that have come out of the pandemic, but also the work that has still carried on, which has been fairly significant. We'll bring out more about the public open forum, so that's better reflected in terms of the detail behind that as a separate appendix. Yeah, and then we can set some more of the context around the date. So I will have another go at doing that, and maybe the best way is if I circulate that, and if people have got comments before we can sign it off as a final draft. So, okay, I'll try and get something out in the next couple of days, so people maybe do it as track changes if people are happy with that, so they can see what's happened and where their comments are reflected. Yeah,
that would be excellent. That's a smart way of working. That's great, Polly. Thank you. Has anyone anything else to add? No, fantastico. In that case, I think we're going to finish within an hour, which is always nice. And it is that time of the year. So thank you very much for everything. As chair, thank you very much for everything you've done this year. It's been not quite the year we expected, but we've achieved a lot and done a lot of work and covered a lot of ground and built a lot of relationships with people. I'm really pleased and proud of all our efforts. So particularly to our officers as well, thank you so much. And Christmas catches me by surprise almost every year, but it is a case of wishing you a very Merry Christmas. Stay in your bubbles, don't do too much. Don't try to shop online, be safe and sensible. And thank you very much. And I'm going to close the meeting in a second. So Merry Christmas, folks.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Chair. Thank you.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.